How's it going? I'm Michael and this is Budget Bills. My dad and I bring rusty, crusty old cars back to life.
What is happening, Budget Builders, and welcome back to the channel. You are probably wondering, what the heck are we doing out here in the middle of the woods? Well, here's this beautiful 1979 Mark I Rabbit. And you're probably wondering what the heck we're doing out here with this rabbit, this abandoned rabbit in the middle of the woods. Well, a couple of years ago, we bought that rabbit pickup truck that I'm building right now. And the lady that we bought it from gave us a couple parts cars that were abandoned up here in the woods, probably in the early 90s, late 80s, something like that. This little car had been wrecked and drug out here and parked back when you couldn't really haul them off or anything, and it was easy enough just to store them out in the woods. And the intake, if you take a peek here, actually doesn't have anything in it, or moisture or anything, and it's a non-power brake car. So there's a few parts I want for myself, including that hood latch and a couple other parts that are left on the car. But I think it'd be really stinking fun to see if we can get this thing running. I think it'd just be the craziest thing, especially how pitiful of state this car is in. So first thing let's do, let's hook up to this thing and try to drag it out to the road. It's probably a good 1/8 mile, but let's get it drug out. You can see we're in the middle of absolutely nowhere. This car actually 2 years ago, this is not the location that it was. You can see we actually drug it out. We had to cut this tree down, but it was back in this hole, half buried underneath this hill. Like, it was in the mound. All you saw was a little bit of the side of the car. And we actually had, I don't remember if it was that tree or this tree, I think we actually had to cut. It was on top of it and everything. And then we drug it out right here, actually with my old Z71 crew cab that I used to drive. So it's been quite a few years ago. But it's been sitting here, and she's trying to clean this property up, I believe, and I'm actually coming over to help clean the property up, and one of the things I gotta get out of here is this rabbit. So let's do it. Yep. Dang it, every wheel on it rolls. So I stuck it in gear, and I'm gonna get Dad to pull it forward a little bit and see if the motor turns over at all. This will kind of tell us. It turned over. It turned over. I cannot believe that. All right, with the car back, we've gone ahead and pulled the wheels and tires that we used to have on the Rabbit pickup truck and stuck them on this car so we can be able to roll it around a little bit more easily. But to begin with, we probably need to clean up under here a little bit. So I've got a trash bag. We're gonna get everything dug out of here, blow it off, vacuum it, and really try to see what we're working with here, which we know is just a crusty old engine, but hopefully it's not an incredibly crusty old engine. So let's get digging around and get started. Oh, and by the way, lady helping me is my cousin Ilana, so she's gonna be helping us film and stuff a little bit. Alright, so as you can see, I've gone ahead and pulled the timing belt cover, and that's just held on by 1, 2, 3, and 4 10mm bolts. And the reason we pulled it was, of course, we figured we would find this, and I am probably going to have to pull the lower as well. But we might as well. We're going to have to go ahead and put a timing belt on there, because we don't want to get this thing fired up and it immediately come apart. As you can see, we still have good tension and all there, so when we were pulling this car around, I don't think we skipped time or anything, but even just blowing on it is just disintegrating that belt. That just gives you an idea how long this car's been sitting out in the woods. But we will go to, let's pop this oil cap. Don't you love an old diesel? Just looks brand new in there. Let's go ahead and drain this oil and see what we're working with. Make sure there's not a ton of water or anything in the bottom of this engine. Alright, so this plug just comes loose. Not too bad with a 19mm. And let's see what awaits us. Nice, no water. Alright, with that oil coming out nice and clean, we'll go ahead and pull this old school Beck Arnley oil filter that you can tell has been on there for literally forever. Let's see how she wants to come off. The heck? Maybe that oil filter I have is right. This is like some kind of overcapacity filter. That is crazy. Look at that. It's like a overcapacity filter. That is old school. All right, I am gonna go ahead and pre-lube this filter. Alright, so I wanted to go ahead and pull that thermostat too, so we know it wasn't stuck. That housing's just completely full of old dead ants. That's really gross. But I went to pull the thermostat. It's the original thermostat. It's pretty cool. And it actually had something that kind of resembled coolant in it. It's a long ways from being coolant, but it used to be at one point of time. So that's a good sign. Alright, so we've got all of our pulleys cleaned up, and we have all of our timing in line. Now on your cam, you want your #1 cylinder lobes both up, and that dead even across. Now when you're doing it, normally you'll stick you've got a special tool that goes in there to hold it, and that's your timing mark there on your crank. And right there, not sure if you can see it, but there's a little 0 and a mark that lines up with a little point right here, and that's your timing mark for your crank. And then your pump has a notch here, a notch there, and a notch on the back of the pulley that lines up there. And I went ahead to throw your tensioner on. You do have to take this motor mount bolt up, jack the engine off up a little bit, get that pulley on, and we can go to slap our belt on there. All right, so we've gone ahead, we got our belt on, we've got it tensioned up pretty nicely, snug down. What I'm gonna go ahead and do first, since it obviously all did pop off, let me throw our 19mm socket on that crank. Let's go through a few revolutions, make sure all our timing marks line back up and that we don't hit anything, make any contact with any valves or anything while we spin it around. All right, after a few revolutions, our marks line up just where they need to be. Let me go and throw the battery back in here. Let's crank it over with the starter a few times and see how it all sounds. All right, so to begin with, we've got our battery hooked up. I do want to turn it over, see if we can pull some oil, and I also want to see if this pump moves anything. I just have this here temporarily. We obviously don't want to turn it over dry. I want to make sure we have some fuel in there for some lubrication. And while we're at it, we'll see if it pulls through. I do have all 4 of our injector lines broken loose here, and we might as well start seeing if they'll bleed while we're at it. But let's go ahead, turn this thing over a few times to see how it sounds. All right, so we can actually see oil already pushing up past the lifters here, so it's got good oil pressure. All right, we already have an injector pushing fuel. That is a good sign. Pump's moving fuel good. That's nice. Oh, and 2 more. This thing's pushing fuel really strong. That's a nice sign. And that last one, easy enough. Don't you just love an old diesel? You can see all that fresh oil that this thing's pushed down, and all those nice wet injectors. Now to see if the injectors actually push fuel, let's go ahead and try to pop it off before we hook anything up. What I need to do is I am going to jump out our glow plugs. Let's get a little warmth in it, that engine, and see if it'll pop off really quick. She'll run. She's got it. Come on. Ooh, that's hot. Oh yeah. She wants it. I'm telling you. Let's burn up a starter. Make this happen. Hear that? That was a cylinder kicking off. So close. You got to remember too, it's 40 degrees out here, so whew, that doesn't help. And all of those glow plugs are probably burnt out too. You know, they'll burn the tips off of them, so they're working, but probably not the greatest. All right, while we're allowing that starter and the wires to cool back down, let's go ahead, and we know this thing's gonna crank. Well, we don't know it's gonna crank. I really think it's gonna crank. It will run. I'm gonna go ahead and get this bottom cover put back on. Our water pump feels good. It'll probably end up leaking, but it's not too hard to replace because you can actually pull it all off from the front there. You pull the whole housing in one go. So for the time being, let's get this cover back on, our pulleys back on, all our belts on, and we'll go back to trying to get this thing to fire off. All right, with everything reconnected, belt-wise and everything goes, let's go ahead, after some cool down time now, and try to fire this thing back off again. Oh, she was so close. Come on! I don't want to put coolant in it just yet till we have a little bit of runtime, because that's just that's that much more coolness that's going to be this engine. We want it to be as warm as it can to try to crank. Come on. Woo! Okay, it's slinging oil everywhere. Oh, it's gonna run. All right, and obviously you just want to get these snug. You don't want to bend that tin valve cover. You just don't want it to leak. All right, let's give her some more cranking over. All right, if it cranks, we're full sending it. Alright, had an air filter laying around I stuck on there. I actually pulled the coolant tank as well off of the Rabbit pickup, so it was nice. We had new lines and everything. We've got a radiator in, we've got it full of coolant, a little bit bigger fuel reservoir, and a return belts, timing belt. Obviously our charging system is not hooked up, there's no wiring on this car. Let's see how she fires up, and let's see if this thing drives. Now, it has no brakes. Obviously, we've got a nice flat area here, and I can pull it and stall it out if we need to. I think we might rub some tire. What do you guys think? Golly, that's a pretty car. What do you think, Nana? Is that a pretty car?
You say so.
She doesn't think it's going to drive, but I think it is. Let's do it. There's that. Glow plugs until it gets hot. Look at that. Get a little exhaust. She's blown a little white, which is a little bit of unburnt fuel, but I think it'll clear up with some runtime. All right. Straighten the steering wheel some. See if we got a clutch. It's a low pedal. Uh-oh. The clutch works. Hold on, let me fix this roof where we can.
So you can sit up straight.
So I can have some headroom. All right, let's crank it up. The seat fell off, man. There's no floor. I think it's gonna do it. So the whole frame is buckling underneath this thing as we drive it around. What's funny is the whole front end's actually super solid. If you know Mark 1s, These shock towers are super, super solid on this car, but because it was in the ground, literally buried, we're losing the floor. It's falling out from under us. But dang, does it actually run pretty good. I mean, no joke, it runs better than the Rabbit pickup truck did when we first got it going. It's got good power. I'm able to shift it. I just can't stop it. So that's a going to town rig right there, if I'd ever seen one. Look at that. That pump actually has 0 leaks, believe it or not. I don't know if I've ever had a Mark 1 that I've got running with that the pump doesn't leak. I actually, no joke, do think this car is fairly low miles, because you can see how long it's been sitting, and being a 79, it probably wasn't driven more than 7 or 8 years or so before, maybe not even that long before it was wrecked and then stuck up on the hill. I did actually call the lady that I got the truck from and asked her, and it was actually her husband's father's car, and he actually passed away in the early 90s, and she told me he, quite a few years before he passed away, wrecked this and stuck it back up in the hills there. So I believe sometime in the mid to late 80s this car was wrecked and stuck up in the hills. Now, I do just want to go ahead and swap this over really quick, because we do not want to run that pump dry. It'll take forever to get it bled back and could potentially burn it up. It's doing so well. That's reverse. What car am I in? It did a burnout, didn't it?
Yeah.
And gravel. Alright, y'all, I know we've done some crazy stuff and got some stuff running that I did not think would run. This probably has to be the craziest thing we've ever done. Y'all tell me that. I personally, 2 years ago when we drug this car out, it was going straight to the scrapyard. We were going to pull like the manual brakes off of it and that hood latch and haul this thing off. That's all we were going to do. But I personally love a challenge, and this was one. It challenged us, but it really surprisingly wasn't that terrible, and that just goes to show how well a Volkswagen was built to have been buried for 30 plus years in the side of a hill, to fire back to life. Not only fire back to life, but to drive. I mean, that is ridiculous. Have good power, the smoke cleared up, and it ran exceptionally well. But sadly, this one is a little too far gone. The entire subframe is falling out from it as we've been driving it around, but it has a good drivetrain, ready to bring another Volkswagen Rabbit back to life, and some other parts, maybe. But that will wrap it up for this episode. If y'all want to see more crazy stuff like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, notification bell. Peace out, and catch y'all on the flip side.